All right. Hello, everybody. So today we've got a kind of a sort of a geometric story to tell, and it kind of has a few elements. It has the Platonic solids, it has the diameter of the Earth, and a trip to London for me, which ended up with the Kensington dentist. So we should be able to make sense of all that in this short video. So, Scott, what are we talking about here today? We're talking about adding the angles on the faces of the Platonic solids, yeah?
That's right. And so they add up to these kind of magic numbers, if you will. And I know you were studying that at the time, just prior to taking this trip to London, right?
And I wanted, you know what made me think about this? Sorry to jump in over you, but actually it was Joe Dubs, who's kind of one of the things I love about this whole geometric world we're in is that you get to meet like-minded people. And I just want to give a thumbs up to Joe Dubs because thank you. You triggered me into adding up the angles on the Platonics. And this is what led to this. So, you know, thumbs up, Joe. And we saw your comment yesterday and it just made me think of you. And that's why we're doing this today.
Yeah. So these Platonic solids, first of all, what are the Platonic solids? They're the, tetrahedron, octahedron, cube, icosahedron, and dodecahedron. And there are only 5 of them that exist. And they're the regular polyhedra. And they were talked about by Plato. Plato kind of kept the dodecahedron kind of behind a curtain. It was kind of secret, It was a special one. But the other ones were kind of associated with the elements, fire, earth, air, and water. And there were these associations that kind of later got picked up by astrology and classifying the 12 signs of the zodiac into these different buckets of fire, earth, air, and water, right? So it's kind of an early like proto-science of classifying what things are made of out of like a certain amount of fire and a certain amount of water and a certain amount of air, would constitute something maybe. And so these philosophers would debate that in ancient Greece. And it's fascinating that there's this correlation between these early theories and the geometries, right? But to me, the geometries come before all of that because they're obviously universal. And they transcend not only human culture, but presumably all cultures everywhere in the universe because there's only one geometry.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate layer.
So if there ever were elements, then we ought to look at these 5 very special 3D geometries that, are very like jewel-like in a way.
They're the most efficient forms to manifest into 3D, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
starting with the
balanced.
tetrahedron.
Yeah, exactly. And so adding up all the angles is a very important exercise to kind of begin to unlock some of the wisdom encoded in these shapes.
Yeah.
And if you add up all of the angles in what is it?
So you've got the tetrahedron, which is fire, 720 degrees. You've got the octahedron, which is air, 1440 degrees. You've got the earth with 2160 degrees, which is a cube. And the icosahedron, which is water, gives you 3600 degrees.
And so what happens
then, Scott?
What is the sum of all of that is 7,920. And that rings a bell from reading, John Michel and Robin Heath's books about measuring the Earth. And what is that? That's the diameter of the Earth in miles, 7,920. Isn't that amazing?
It's a totally cool coincidence. Like it's actually a mind blower. So the 4 earthly elements, fire, air, earth, water, I know we're talking about the Greek era, but still, isn't it cool that like the geometric properties by simply adding the angles on the faces happens to equal the diameter of the Earth?
Then you found another way of getting there by including the dodecahedron, right?
So yeah, can I tell a little story then, right? Because it's kind of cool. So I was like tripping out on this concept one day when I was going to London from Dublin in Ireland. I was taking a short flight to London and I was having great fun with these principles. And I was getting really lifted up by the fact that, wow, if you add the 4 earthly elements, it equals the diameter of the Earth. And then I was playing around with like, I wonder what would happen if you added other combinations. And then I struck gold when I added the dodecahedron, which is 6480, to the octahedron, which is 1440, and I went, voila, that's 7920, the same number, the same diameter of the
And
Earth.
what do those represent? The
So yeah, and so then I was
dodecahedron?
thinking,
Yeah.
the dodeca is like ether, and the octahedron is air. And I was thinking they're the two most kind of non-tangible or non-material out of all the solids. Like, it's hard to grab a handful of air, isn't it? And the ether is even more elusive. It's like, what is the ether? Like the invisible interconnecting principle of all that? I don't really know, but it's, yeah, it has that energy to it. It's like, what is the ether? And so then I was thinking, wow, like they almost represent two ways of being in the same place, planet Earth, 7920. So one is the material, kind of earth, air, fire, water, the concrete. We're here, we're like, flesh encapsulated egos, as Alan Watts would say, here on planet Earth, and we're all going about our day in rush hour traffic, okay? That's the material realm, the four earthly elements, earth, air, fire, water. But then there's also a way of being here, which is more ethereal, more mysterious, more difficult to grasp, this ether and air. It's more
invisible, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if you put those together, air and ether, then you get the same diameter. And
Yeah.
so to me, this speaks of sort of the body and the soul sort of having a mutual importance. Both of these ways of getting to the diameter of the Earth are valid.
Yeah.
Adding up earth, fire, air, and water is one way. That's sort of representing the body. And then adding the air and the ether together sort of represents the soul in my mind.
Me
Because
too.
they add up to the same sums. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And it's like, here we are on planet Earth, and these Platonic combinations, could be read metaphorically as, the realization that we kind of potentially, if we so choose, can live with a foot in both worlds, the material and the ethereal, and I just really, I got so lifted up by this. But let me just go with this story, if I can indulge myself, because when I got off the plane and I got to my hotel in London, right, I was doing another thing on the plane, right? I was learning off the golden ratio by heart, right? I mean, I'm kind of disclosing what a nerd I am, but
Like
this is the stuff I
the
do.
digit 1.618 ... right?
Yeah, I was actually thinking, what if I ended up on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And it was like, and then the question was, Geoff, for £1,000,000, can you recite the golden ratio to 10 digits? And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't. So I'm nerding out and I'm learning the golden ratio. Phi, right? 1.61803398875. So I'd learned that. I was having fun, combining the dodecahedron and phi. These two principles were running in my consciousness. Okay. And then I walk out of the hotel. I get to this place just by random. I just booked any random hotel in London, off the internet. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. I walk by this place called Kensington Dentist, and get this, look at the logo I see.
Yeah.
It's this perfect dodecahedron with the symbol for phi, in the window. And so, like, I just was bowled over. I was kind of like, oh my God, like, what is this? Because I was running all these geometries. I was getting excited about the coincidence, oh my God, like ether, air, the elements, the diameter of the Earth, coincidence. Then I'm walking around about my day, and then boom, like, I've never seen a dodecahedron with phi planted in it ever before that moment.
It's like where the inside, what you're contemplating meets the outside world.
Yeah.
I think that's what
Yeah.
synchronicity is all about, is making that
Synchronistic.
connection, right? And what does that say? What did that mean to you at the time when you noticed that? What did that
There
feel like?
was,
And what was the significance?
well, you look, I know that coincidences are subjective, right? So and you would be totally allowed kind of hear this story and go, yeah, whatever, Geoff, you're just projecting into it. But you know what? For me, right, deep down, like, I had this emotional kind of like resonance with, oh my God, it's as if like the universe is speaking to me from behind a veil. And there's some kind of like endorsement going on, or recognition of, like, it had this feeling of like, good job, like, right on, stay with it, and it's like, it's so encouraging to get these kind of like reflections back from the external world, you know, that mirror what you've been running in your internal world, you know. And so it's a, I would say, Scott, it was kind of like a endorsement of some kind, you know. Like, have you had coincidences like that happen to you with your journey with geometry?
Definitely. And I think back to when I was writing Secrets in Plain Sight, and that was a time of a lot of synchronicities and coincidences happening in my life. And at a point, it became like too much because it was happening all the time. And it was, but it was also very validating that I was on the right track.
Mm.
And then when I finished that project, you kind of miss that. You kind of want to get back on that high of seeing all these synchronicities happen, you know.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I kind of, at times, I when I start to see these things happen, it's very encouraging, and it's very invigorating that
mm.
you're getting this messaging almost from a higher level that you're on the right track. That's
That's,
how I
yeah,
interpret it. But I want to caution people not to, like, if you're seeing them everywhere, it could be, it's a kind of fine line of reading into it too much, you know,
yeah, and
and
going mad.
going crazy with
Yeah, yeah,
synchronicities. Like, I saw this everywhere, and it's just like, well, calm down, okay? Because
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
also have to live in the material world where
yeah,
most people
yeah.
don't believe in this whole soul idea or anything like that. And so
That's a great point.
you've got,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
balancing act
There
to
is,
have
and you
here.
need to
Yeah,
bring discernment in as well, you know. There's what's there's one principle, confirmation bias, you know,
yeah,
where you say, like, I wonder, am I going to see any red cars today? And then every second car is a red car, you know, because you've primed your consciousness to see that.
yeah.
And then there's another thing called patternicity, which is a kind of a cool word, which is like you are psychologically projecting something from inside yourself out onto the external. So you're kind of reading into things in your environment rather than your environment speaking to you. And
I
it's
think
a difficult dance to discern, actually, you
can
know,
kind of
but
get
an
in the way
important one.
of pure observation, I think, is if you're always projecting things
Mm-hmm.
out there, it gets in the way of just being calm and observing
Open.
what
Yeah.
comes in, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but that
Having
said,
said that,
it's also really exciting when it does happen. And I'm sure
it
everybody's
is
experienced this at one time in their
it's
life or another.
very invigorating.
Yeah,
And I actually do believe sincerely that when you meditate upon and reflect upon sacred geometry and sacred geometric principles, somehow, and I don't really understand why, but coincidence and synchronicity does get amplified in your life. I just think it's a byproduct of it, you know. So whatever that means, I'm working on.
yeah.
But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let us know.